Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video we're going to take our character, which already has ground attack, ground state, and air state, where we can move around ground and air with animations, and we're going to add air attacks to it. So it's going to look very similar to our ground attack, where we can chain together 3 different attacks for the ground, but 2 for the air. And we'll basically be setting up a duplicate scenario, but only accessible from the air. So if we look at animated sprite 2D, we can see we have air attack 1 with 3 frames and air attack 2 that also has 3 frames. So we need to take those animations over to animation player by clicking on animation player. I'll go to attack 1 and duplicate this, and we'll say air attack 1. Zoom in on the timeline, enable timeline snapping to cursor, and let's click on this animation frame, change the animation to air attack. Now if we play it, we should have our air attack kind of play here. Okay, and now we need to adjust the position and scale of our collision shape to actually match this air attack. So I'm going to click on collision shape and we'll scale it upwards. Be sure that you're not actually changing these handles on the collision shape, because if you do that, that's changing the shape itself, which was already set up for other attacks. So if you change the collision shape, because that's not keyframed, it's going to affect the other moves too. Just a gotcha of how I have it currently set up. But as long as we increase the scale here to where we need it to be and adjust the position, I think we can do W to adjust position still. And scale it to what we need it to be. Then we can keyframe the scale, keyframe the position, and okay, so now we want to go to frame 0 here, and we want to adjust the position and scale of our collision shape node so that it can be appropriate for our attack. So let's scale, hold on, we have to click on the sword collision shape and then scale this up. You can also scale X and Y independently if that helps. And then adjust the position. Okay, and we need to make sure we add the keyframe for these values. So you can click on the keyframes to double check that we have the right values there. And now if you kind of scroll on the timeline to frame 0, we should have the right position. So we need to do that again for over here. We can increase the scale and then keyframe position and scale. Okay, so here's frame 0, frame 1, and the second frame. Oh, really, it's the third frame. So for this one, actually, we're going to just disable the attack. So I'm going to right click on the disabled track, insert a key, and let's check disabled. So now it's going to be 0 where it's active, frame 1 is active, and then the third position here is inactive, so we don't need to set a attack position. So on the last frame, it won't be able to damage anything, basically. Now we need to do that once again for air attack 2. So I'm just going to duplicate air attack 1 to get air attack 2. Let's go to the animation, change that to air attack 2. And now just scroll and position the position of the collision shape. So now just position and scale the collision shape 2D as you need. And be sure to hit keyframe for scale and position. And we can kind of do the same thing there, position, position. And at the third one, what we can see that it's kind of already done here again. So it's up to you if you want the sword to still be able to damage anything at this frame or just disable it altogether. If you disable it, you don't need to worry about position and scale because it's already disabled. So it's going to look kind of like this for the hitbox, so to speak. Okay, and that's our animation setup. So now we need to duplicate, let's say, ground attack. And I'll call this air attack state. And let's jump into the code. So what we need is pretty similar to what we had before. What we could do is rename ground attack state. So let's look for ground attack state and call it something like attack chain state. Okay, hit enter there. If you want, we can make it a class name, attack chain state, because we're going to reuse it. So now on the air attack state, we're going to use air attack 1 as the enter, air attack 2 as the second, and we're going to leave the third one blank. So we can change the code up here a little bit. On animation finished, we were going to attack 2 and attack 3. So what we'll say is that if an attack is blank, then we will not go to it. We'll just dispatch finished automatically. So if attack2 dot is empty, we will dispatch finished and return. We can copy that same bit down here, except with let's see, attack3. Yeah. All right, that should be good. So we just want to send the finished event if there is no attack to chain into. That should be good enough for right now. I think the last thing is that we need to know where we're returning to. So that's going to be set up on the state machine script. So going back into here, we want to be able to say that we go from the air attack state, so we haven't defined that in the inspector yet, to air when the finished signal is emitted. And then likewise, we want to be able to go from air to air attack when attack is added in. So add transition states air to states air attack, and that's going to be the attack event. So depending on if we're on the ground or air, that determines which kind of attack we're going to use. And now we need to open up this states dictionary. Just add in our new state node, which is air attack. And the value of the dictionary key value pair is the air attack state. And then be sure to hit add key value pair so it's actually in there. Okay, now to get the attack event to send out, I'm going to check the ground state because I think I had the code right in here. So if the attack var is set on update for ground state, we would dispatching an attack. So I think I'm going to just copy that over to air state and have the same thing. So on update here, we'll just copy paste that in. If blackboard get var, attack var is set, and this was coming from the player import. So the player import will send when attack is used or attack button is pressed, and then we use that to create an event on the state machine, which will get us transitioned into our air attack. So let's hit play and see if that works at all. I'll jump and then we left click, and then we can have our air attack state just like that, which returns us to air state. So if we do one attack, we go back immediately. If we do two attacks, then, well, yeah, same thing, but we get both attacks off and then we go back to the air state. So that already is pretty much working exactly as we want. I might still want to double check a couple things, make sure that our air attack and air attack 2 have the right duration, non-looping, and that should pretty much be fine. Okay, so let's add in one more thing. So in air attack state as it is right now, our character completely freezes up. We turn off move and slide. Well, rather it's not running move and slide. So for some games, that might actually be what you want, right? You want to just stop the character's movement while it attacks. But let's say that you want it to be able to keep moving while it attacks, or at least have the option to do so. So what we can do is we can take ground state and air state and kind of turn those into more of a base state where we still have a ground, but this would be more like the ground move state. And then ground attack can inherit from the ground. So the ground attack can still use the ground movement because they both inherit from the same base state. And then air attack will be the same. We can enable or disable air movement for our air attack state based on whether we want that or not. So that will just be mostly reorganizing some code around. So to make it more clear though, I'll rename the ground state to be ground move state and air state to be air move state. Okay. And then I want to create a base state that extends character state for those. So let's go into player. I'll right click, create a new script. Let's call it, oh, well, hold on. First, I want to rename the other one. So this is ground move state, and air state should be, if I can find it, air move state. So now we'll create the ground state and the air state that is the base for those classes. So let's start with air state, since we're working on the air for this video primarily. And this will inherit from character state. Okay. And then air move state is going to inherit from air state. So now at this point, basically, air state is a base class for anything that happens in the air. So if we want to be able to add air movement in, we just inherit from air state. And then the same thing is going to apply for ground state, which ground move state inherits from. Okay, so right now it says that we can't find the base class name, so I'm going to copy that over to air state and give it a class name. Okay, that should help for inheritance. Okay, and now we're in there. So it says that these animations already exist in air state. When I created the script, I actually didn't mean for all this other stuff to come in here. So because that's an air move state, let me double check. Okay, it's should be all the same. And I want to cut all of this out of there. I want to cut this out too. Okay. So now air move state should be able to operate. What I want to take is this air move, and I'm going to put that in air state. So I'm going to cut this and paste it into air state. So now every air state has the air move function, which we can optionally use. And I can add in a variable to determine whether any given air state will actually run this or not by saying at export var, let's say can move, which is a Boolean. And we will default this to true, I suppose. Okay, and then on function update, we will just run if can move, then we're going to run air move. So this is not a function, it's just a property set up here. Okay, so now any air state will move by default if can move is checked. Let's go to air move state and see here. So since air move's being called in the parent state, we can just make this a super here. So we do the air move if it's there. Okay, we need to pass in the delta. So the super function still needs the same parameter. So we just pass that up. This runs the air move, runs air move. Then we get the animation and so on and so forth. Okay, and now if we click on air move state, you'll see that can move is checked. So if I hit play, we should still be able to move in the air. But if I uncheck, let's uncheck can move, and I hit play, then now our character can't move at all in the air. Which would be how the air attack was working before. So that may be what we want. I'm going to click on Limbo HSM. Let's just make sure. Okay, yeah, when we change the name of the nodes, it still has the reference. That's good. So now we're going to make air attack state inherit from, yeah, we'll make it inherit from air state. Okay, hit enter. If we have can move checked, then it'll be able to move. If we have can move checked on air move state, then it should be able to move. So now if we hit play and we attack, you'll see that it is actually attacking. But the gravity is not being applied. So maybe gravity is also something we want to move into here. So if we're going to do an air move, we probably want to also apply the gravity as we would expect. So if we hit play and now we jump and then attack, our character is still applying the gravity. We can kind of see, though, if we say in the air attack state, while we're on the ground, that it keeps attacking, which is probably not what we want. So in the air move state, we have that check for if it's on the ground, then we're going to return to the ground. I'm actually going to put that in air state as well. So copying, pasting it in here, and this will dispatch on ground. So I want to add another connection from air attack to ground state. When we land on the ground during an attack, basically we automatically switch to ground. So our attack ends. So let's add that in. Add transition states air attack to states ground when on ground event occurs. So if we hit play and we jump and we keep attacking, well, you can see we switch to the ground, which is probably more like what we expect. So just kind of adding those extra transitions where it makes sense. Okay, and if we want the air attack to still not allow movement, then we turn that off, and then it'll be more like just like before. Okay, so one more thing. When we are attacking but not able to move, the velocity doesn't change, so we're unable to flip between a right attack and a left attack. So what you might want to do on the facing node is actually pull from the blackboard's direction instead of the character velocity. So if you want to do it that way, let's just say that you do, then let's get the state machine. So the limbo hierarchical state machine, and then we'll get the blackboard from that. And this should look kind of familiar because we've done it before. So blackboard is going to be equal to limbo hsm.blackboard. And then we will get the direction value on every frame. So our current input direction is equal to blackboard.getVar bb names dot direction var. Okay, and this is going to be a vector2. So just like with the actual velocity, we're just going to replace this with our new vector of input. Now, as long as you assign the HSM, we should be able to grab the blackboard. And now, when we're doing our attacks, we're using the input rather than the actual velocity. So that could be a little more flexible in how you do your air attacks if you happen to be turning movement off. I'm going to turn movement back on for that. So that's going to be a lot more like this. And now we just need to kind of do the same thing with the ground state as well. So the base ground state, we have to create that. So ground state is going to inherit from character state. We'll create that. And yeah, it seems like when the script's name still exists in memory, that it just remembers all the other information that was in it. We'll cut that out in a second here. So not ground attack, but ground state. We'll get rid of all of this, and then we'll figure out what needs to go in. So we'll keep move and jump down here, but let's get rid of all of this, as well as these. Okay, now we'll go to character animation player. Well, I guess if we need that, then we're going to need the jump animation name after all. Okay, so we can keep jump animation there. So that we can still do the jump from any ground state. Okay, let's check out the ground move state now. So we don't need this because that's in the base class. But we do need to extend from ground state. Okay, and then we don't need jump animation because that is set there. You might want to make sure that the name of the jump animation is still correct here. So just check all your variable names. So just like with the air state, we can get this bit and move it to the base ground state. So we'll have function update in here as well. We'll have that, and we'll say if can move, then we're going to run these lines. I guess if we want to store the current velocity, well, don't really need to do that because when you move, it's on the character body anyway. So we can just adjust for that. So if can move, we have to export that variable. Can move is Boolean. We'll just set it to true. Then we're going to apply the gravity. So that's going to be, we can rename this to P delta if we want, or just delta delta. Okay, so there's our parent update. So let's go to the ground move state. And we're going to call super with P delta for our base movement. And then this can just grab the character dot velocity. Okay, effectively ends up being about the same. I think we want to grab this out too and move it to the base ground state. So say something like this. If the character's on the floor, we're going to allow it to jump. Let's add another variable, can jump, which will be a Boolean set to true. So if can jump, we'll say if can jump and these other requirements. Three if requirements in one line is kind of a lot. 3 if requirements is three conditions in one line is kind of a lot, but functional for now. We're mostly just kind of prototyping. So if it is not on the floor, then we want to dispatch that it's in the air. I think we still do want to do that. So we are probably going to want that on first frame back up here as well. So let's get on first frame. I'll put that in ground state. And after update is done, I'll cut that to the ground state as well. Okay, so now all of the ground states are going to have that so they don't actually accidentally just switch to in air before that first frame is up. But we are going to want a connection between, let's say, the ground attack and air state. If for some reason we happen to like fall off a cliff while we're doing an attack, then we might actually need to just end the animation. Or maybe we don't. That's kind of up to you. In some games, I think when you do a ground attack, but you end up in the air, it would still finish the animation. So that's up to you. If you do want to add that in, then just add a transition from attack to air based on that condition of in air, I think it was. In air. So yeah, you could just make the ground attack to air as well. Right, so let's hit play and see if everything still works the same. It's looking good. We have ground attack. We can still move and attack at the same time. Optionally, we could go a little further here and make it so that when you attack on the ground, your movement is slowed or something like that, but it's just another layer of complexity. I think you kind of get the idea. We have like the slower movement in the air, so you should kind of already know how to do that. But that might involve getting separate variables for the speed, so you might have to like export the variable name and then get that from the stats block, so on and so forth. You know what though? Let's just show that. It shouldn't take too long. Okay, so we need to look up stats in our file system. We'll go to character stats. We could say at export var attacking run speed and make this a flow of 150.0. So now to differentiate between these for the ground move and ground attack, I'm going to need to open up the base class. Let's add an export var for movement speed stat name. Or movement speed stat var. Movement speed var. Okay, and this would default to run speed here. So when we move, we're going to get this value from the character stats. So var new speed is going to be a float. It's going to be equal to character.stats.get. We need to give it the property name here, which is this, movement speed var. Paste that in there. And then whenever we use character stats run speed, we replace that with move speed. So that should just be 2 places here. And that's pretty much it. So first off here, we're going to use run speed, but on ground attack, we're going to say, hold on a minute. I see it. Hold on. Ground attack is actually using air state. Okay. So that should be using ground state now, right? And then that's going to have the variable here. So we're going to say attacking move speed, I think is what I called it, right? If we click up here, we can see it on the stats, attacking run speed. So on the ground attack, attacking run speed. And those should be different values. So one's 300, one's 150. Let's hit play. So here we have our ground attack where we're slowed down and we move at full speed when we are in the ground move state. So that is one way how you can do it. If we like to be consistent with these other string names, we can also make that a string name instead of just a string. So I'll type it as a string name, but in pretty much all cases, a string name and a string will work the same when you're looking things up using property getters and such like that. Okay, so I think we've pretty much set up our character controller, at least for its attacking states. Oh, it looks like the air attack is not going back to the ground again. Let me make sure about that. Air attack. Okay, so I made air attack. Oh, hold on a minute. Yeah, right. I need to actually separate them into separate scripts. Okay, duh. So let's see here. So we had attack chain state. This would just be ground attack state now. Yeah, so I guess the inheritance is getting a little messy. Okay, this definitely isn't the best way to do it, but it is the quickest. So I'll say air attack state, and then we're going to go into air attack state. I'm going to paste everything in, and then we'll say class name air state. Extends air state. Could not find base class air state. That's odd. Air state's right there. Okay, looks good now. So if we click on air state, we need to make sure that we assign air attack state. Okay, that's a little odd. Let's unset that, and I'll drop in air attack state right there. Okay, so we'll need to set air attack state into here. Okay, and that should look more familiar now. So air attack 1 goes in here, air attack 2 goes in here, and the ground attack state is still using ground attack state, which is what we want. And that has all of the ground state variables. So I think if we hit play now, okay, our ground attack's working, our air attack's working, and our air attack can go back to the ground. Okay. Yeah, now everything's working pretty okay there. Yeah, okay, so that's a pretty clean state transition between these different states. After we add in like enemies and such, the character probably needs a hit state and maybe a death state, and that's about it. The last extra thing, make sure in the ground attack, since that has jump here, I am going to set the jump animation name to jump S, but I'm also going to turn off can jump. And also, if we're going to leave jump enabled, then you're going to want to be able to transition out of ground attack into air. So let's go into Limbo HSM and add a transition for states when we're on ground to states air. And that's going to be the jump event. And that's actually ground attack or just attack. That's what we're calling it as the string. So yeah, let me see on the base ground state, we get the in air and jump. So it dispatches jump. Okay, so that should work. If we're attacking on the ground and we hit jump, well, we're going to get into air move. Unless we happen to be spamming the left mouse button, then it's going to look like we immediately go into air attack. But yeah, when we're in the air, we should stop with our ground attack. I think that makes sense. Or at least when we jump, we should stop with the ground attack. Okay, so just wanted to add that in, one extra transition, and that's pretty much it for the video. As well as the sword needs the ability to actually deal damage to the enemy, but that is going to require adding in health and a couple other things. We will get to that in the next videos, kind of after we add in the AI for the enemy. That was kind of more of one of the main focuses of the course, and then we will finish up with adding in the actual damaging and hitting and maybe seeing some text numbers and a health bar, that kind of thing. We'll get to that. So that's going to be it for this video, kind of wrapping up the base of our player character's state machine with the LimboAI system. So until my next video, I've been Chris, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my future video content.